let's get busy.
Brian Cunningham in the house. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going, man.
Thanks for having me.
One thing that I have really been into in the last several months, probably close to a year, is the whole film industry here in town.
Awesome.
Started with my buddy Antonio.
Oh, yeah.
Antonio Pantoa. Killer guy, killer person, just a genuinely good guy. A fan. He had done some music videos for some friends, and then I really got hooked on everything he was involved with, and then just had him on a couple times, and he's got a big premiere coming up.
Yeah, we'll plug it. It's March 15th.
March 15th in Cincinnati, world premiere kind of thing for One Must Fall. So. Antonio and
I've seen it. It's very, very good.
I can't wait.
It's if you're a horror fan, it's brutal and it's funny and it's a crazy movie.
That's really and fun. He's gotten a lot of compliments and praise and notoriety off this. So and then I had John Wells on.
Oh God, what did John say about me?
Well, I don't know if he per se said anything about you, but when we got to talking about all the stuff he was involved with, he mentioned the movie Overtime, and that Al Snow was one of the leads. And I'm a wrestling fan.
Yeah,
I've been from like old school wrestling. So Al Snow back in WWF and it's at WWE now, but so I had to check it out. And I was pleasantly surprised, pleasantly entertained. And then I'm looking at who's involved, because it was all local. I can see recognize all the a lot of the locations that it was filmed at, and I was going through the credits and saw that you were involved. So in my quest to to soak up and talk to as much of you talents in the film industry, I'm gonna just play my podcast card and say, will you please come on and hang out with me? But all this is doing,
anytime there is beer available, I will be there.
Tis while we're here too. Again, a shout out Baxter's 942. This is my home base to do my podcasting. So again, much props to them for taking care of me. Brian, your company is ThoughtFly Films, right?
Yeah, it's kind of split into two parts. We've got ThoughtFly Films, which focuses on all the movie stuff,
right? And
then ThoughtFly Studios is the production arm. So we do a lot of commercials and web videos and stuff for agencies in town. So that's. I kind of look at it as ThoughtFly Studios makes the money and buys the toys. ThoughtFly Films gets to make fun, stuff that we all get to kind of be a little more creative on.
Gotcha. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. After you were born in the manger and you escaped it, what was it? What was that epiphany or moment that you realized the whole film thing is where I wanted to?
It was when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do when I grew up, when I was a little kid. I wanted to be a fireman, and then I wanted to be, Fox Mulder from the X-Files. I wanted to be in the FBI. Then I wanted to be,
I still want to be Fox Mulder.
Everyone wants to be Fox Mulder. So there was all these things I wanted to be, and I loved movies, and I'd go and I'd watch a movie, and then that night, I'd be like, okay, I watched this movie, I want to be that, and I watch this movie, I want to be that. I was like, well, why don't I just make movies? And that way I can pretend that, I can learn everything about all the things I make movies about. Right. And then I don't have to pick one thing. Right. I can be, anything I want. Then, of course, I made horror movies. So it's like, I'm basically just pretending to be serial killers and zombies and all that stuff. So it's kind of strange.
And you're doing your writing too, right?
Yeah.
So, this is like soup to nuts for you in a sense, right?
It's story all the way through to this last one I did excuse me, I did the edit on, and you know, luckily we've got some really awesome people at ThoughtFly that can help me with color and delivery and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I start writing it and then kind of, you know, and I'm involved in every little bit
directing
of it
and everything too.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, so this one, Wretch, is the first movie I've directed solo. But even then, I had a couple of producers that were really creatively involved that could slap me upside the head whenever I was screwing something up. But yeah, I've co-directed the other things. So, like I said, ThoughtFly is really just a really tight group of people that work together on commercial stuff and on film stuff. So it's pretty cool to be able to grab a couple of your friends and a camera and go shoot a few scenes and figure out what you want to do and then turn that into a movie eventually.
Exactly. What part? What was it about the genre that just?
I mean, I've loved horror since I was a little kid. I love scaring myself and going that direction. And then, you know, I went through
scaring yourself or scaring others?
Scaring myself.
Okay,
mostly.
really?
Yeah, my sister was the one who liked to scare me. So she would dress up and, you know, knock on the door at 2 a.m. and then scare the crap out of me in the middle of the night. And so I guess I have her to blame for where I ended up.
Do you still get scared?
You know, not by movies.
Yeah.
But like, I'll still get the creeps late at night, you know, with the lights off, and it's actually kind of fun. That it's nice. I hope I can always get myself.
Reminds you you're still human.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that
none of this has really numbed you.
Might still be some things out there I don't understand, which
Right.
is, you know, if you stop believing that, I think life gets really boring. So,
Go the overtime. What was how did that all come about? Because I love the whole angle because it's a 2-part thing.
Yeah, that was all Matt. So Matt Niehoff is my partner in crime with Overtime, and he's my business partner at ThoughtFly.
Okay.
And we were working at a different production company, and one day we'd only known each other like 4 or 5 months at that point. He walked into my room and he had a script and he said, "I'm going to make this. Will you shoot it for me?" Was how it started, because I was a DP at the production company.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, but can I read it and give you some notes? And then I'm the kind of guy, if I'm going to read something and give you notes, I give you a stack of, you know, I'm just really honest and straightforward. So we ended up actually going back and forth and doing a bunch of drafts on that together. And then by the time it got time to shoot it, you know, it was really a 50-50. We were kind of in each other's brains about it.
He was someone who, I'm curious, someone who hands you a script. And it was his.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it becomes half of his.
A little bit, yeah.
How does that?
Well, Matt is the most collaborative. Like,
Okay.
he and I both try and be as collaborative as we can. So it was, you know, hey, it was always, how can we make this better?
Right.
Because when Overtime started, like, all the tentacle stuff and all the, you know, the hierarchy of the monster, like, that was all missing. And then we kind of figured that out as we went. So I really think it was, you know, it wasn't so much like, oh, you're taking it away. It was more like, hey, let's figure out a way to make this really cool. And at that point, it was just the excitement of making a movie, you know? Like, we didn't have Al involved. We were just like, let's go shoot this movie over weekends, and it probably won't do anything, but it'll be fun. And then Al Snow came and just walked into the audition and was amazing, and he's Al Snow. And then it was about a quarter of the way through the filming, we were like, oh, this might be like a real movie. Like, we might actually be able to pull this off. And that was at the very beginning of like DSLRs and people being able to make movies really inexpensively.
2010?
We started shooting in 2009, I think.
Okay, all right.
So it's 10 years, a decade ago is when we started it.
You know, maybe it's that I didn't know enough. I don't know enough about the industry, but when I watched it, and knowing that these are local people, local actors, actresses, local production people, it didn't look like a local movie. I mean, it felt like, I mean, it was on, where did I watch it? On Amazon? I guess it was Prime.
Yeah, probably.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
It's on Prime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was, I mean, we were as shocked as anybody when it started coming together. But you know, we luckily at that point in our lives had access to a lot of toys that a lot of people didn't have at that point. And those little DSLR, you know, micro four thirds and you know, full frame sensors had just come out. So we were one of the first movies, I think, to really jump on that bandwagon and start shooting movies like that. I look back at it now 10 years later and I'm just like horrified at what it looks like because, you know, you get older and you progress and you practice and you learn some new things.
Do you? When you look back at that movie, you do?
There's a couple of scenes in there.
Really?
Why did I like that way?
Yeah. But at that time, though, it's kind of it's what you knew or what you had access.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, no, I'm still really proud of it. It's just, you know, you get better, hopefully, as time goes on. So there's a bunch of things I'd do a little differently if I could do it again.
And I'd say this with all due respect. The acting was pretty damn good, too. I mean, it was... I mean, again, I'm watching this thinking, you know, this is a local bunch of actors and production. So, again, with all due... my expectation wasn't, you know, way over the top. But...
Yeah.
Like I said, at the end of the movie, I'm like, wow, that was fucking good.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've got a great acting pool in town.
That's kind of what I've come to find out.
Yeah, it's Louisville's a city that keeps people here, and there's a lot of actors I know, actually, who took the stab in L.A., got a little bit of work, but just didn't like the culture and end up back here. So, you know, if they can make it work, then they'd rather be in the city. So, you know, we want to take advantage of that as much as possible. And there's some really great actors in this town.
When it comes to making movies, you know, taking it, I guess, to the next level where you've got production people, you got people who's got some deep pockets and stuff. Are we at a point where here in Louisville you can attract those people to come and invest in the work and the talent here in town? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I know people who've done that. We haven't really gotten too far into the high investment. We had a few investors on Loss Prevention, which was the movie that we did in about 4 years ago is when we shot it, and it just came out in August.
Sabrina
of last
in
year.
that too?
It is Sabrina, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think you can attract those people. There were a bunch of movies shooting here, especially when all those tax incentives were in place. They're kind of fallen away a little bit now.
That's kind of what I've heard too. Why is that?
It's politics.
I don't really.
I don't really understand the logic. I think it's an argument over, hey, all this money's walking away because we're giving these tax incentives versus, all the money's walking away, but you're also bringing a lot of work in. So, you know, both sides kind of have arguments either way. We just, you know, everyone I know in the industry is just like, I just want to make movies, whatever we can do to get movies. So, but I think you can get a lot of interest in Louisville. There's still kind of a stigma, like you've got to go to LA or New York or shoot in one of these tax incentive cities to make it worthwhile at a certain budget level. But for a while there, we were really knocking it out, you know, at ThoughtFly Studios, where, you know, we do a lot of like finishing of movies, color correction, music, sound mix, that kind of stuff. So that stuff's still coming in all the time.
I was watching the movie last couple of days. Hellier, have you heard of that? Hellier.
I don't think so.
It's on, was it on Prime, I think. But it's one of those. Actually, it's supposed to be a legit kind of a documentary where it's a town in Kentucky. So this paranormal group is going there, and supposedly the Kentucky Goblins. Have you heard of their goblins? And it ties into kind of potentially the Mothman thing. But there's these caves that they discovered in the mining area. It's in like Pike County or whatever, Kentucky, that there's all these caves that go throughout the state and into the Appalachian. I guess what long story short is, when it comes to horror, why are the documentary type, that based so
there's two reasons why they're so popular. Is first of all, they're cheap. They're really inexpensive to make. But
and Blair Witch is that's the benchmark, right?
Yeah. But what's funny is Blair Witch, when it came, like half of that movie shot on 16 millimeter film, so it's found footage, but it's still, that wasn't a terribly cheap movie to make necessarily. I mean, compared to now, so it's inexpensive to do, but also I think there's something about that. If you can pull it off and get a sense of realism to it, where these characters really feel real, you can kind of forget that you're watching a movie and just really feel like this is something that's happening to people. I think that's kind of the goal of horror.
Is there a story with that particular, with Blair Witch, that some of that was... Do you know the background of Blair Witch?
I think so.
Wasn't there, with that, maybe I'm thinking something else, where they're actually in the woods, and I don't know, a lot of it was per se ad-libbed. I mean, I don't know.
The way they did Blair Witch is they would actually, the producers knew the storyline, but they direct as they went. So what they did, they didn't have any contact with the actors.
Do they call that in the, what do they call that in the business? As far as you're directing as
it's going on?
Yeah.
I think it's just making it up.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a term.
That sounds like that's good enough for me.
But then at the end of the day, they'd watch the footage from the day, or they'd watch them from afar, and they'd write little Post-it notes of directions of what these guys need to do the next day. So, they were kind of pushing them in the right direction. I think one of the notes was like.
But how much of that was actually scripted then?
I think they scripted a good chunk of it before. I think they knew where the beginning, middle, and end were. I think they knew it was going to be lost in the woods. One person was going to disappear. The other two were going to keep looking for him. And then in the end, they were going to end up in that creepy house. So I think that was kind of the
Is that the kind of the norm when it comes to the more documentary type?
I think it depends on, there's something like Paranormal Activity, which I really love Paranormal Activity. I think that actually took found footage, which was kind of silly, and then just made a really good movie that happened to be a found footage movie. That was way more scripted because it was a paranormal, they had to do effects and really design the movie. So I think it just really depends on what you're looking to do and what the goals are. We did Wretch 2 years ago.
What's the storyline there?
So Wretch is about, the goal was to take every found footage cliche and do it in a way that was completely different, and by the end of the movie you're watching something different than what you thought you were. So the premise is 3 friends who have a history go into the woods to hang out and do drugs together. Something happens and you don't know what it is, and you spend the rest of the movie trying to figure out what happened, and they are convinced that there's a monster after them, and what's the nature of the monster. So it's kind of half mystery, half found footage, half normal movie, because it starts out found footage, but then by the end it kind of starts morphing into a real movie or into a normal movie, and you never quite know what perspective you're watching from. Who's shooting what, at what point, what the motivations for the camera angles, all that stuff were. So that was kind of the goal of Wretch, was to play with that genre and, honestly just kind of mess with people's heads a little bit. And it's a psychological movie, it kind of mirrors where the characters are at.
Gotcha. You're a fan of the paranormal?
I am. I think some of the ghost hunting stuff's gotten just a little out of control for me. I watch Ghost Adventures, but not because I believe it's real. I watch Ghost Adventures because Zach Bagans is one of the is one of the funniest guys to watch.
Very entertaining. Very entertaining.
In the world. So, and then just watching when they're getting ready to punch a ghost in the face, and then a broom falls over and they start hiding behind each other, I think is one of the more entertaining things. Yeah. So,
but did they get kind of called out for?
I know way too much about this.
Yeah. No.
It was Aaron went on, I think, a podcast or a talk show or something, and basically admitted that the producers were having them make stuff up. And then the producers came
Well,
out
when
and
they were they making stuff
lying.
up as far as, you know, was stuff actually happening, but they, just
Yeah, I think what he said was they would go into a place, and if it was slow to happen or it wasn't that dramatic, the producers would bring them back or prod them to kind of get there. Is what he said, and then the producers came out and were like, "He's lying," and then eventually he said, "I'm lying. That's not true," and then went back to the show and cashed his paycheck.
Cashed
But
his paycheck.
do
do you believe in the ghosts? Do you believe when they go and do their all these ghost shows?
Mm-hmm.
Have we've not found the silver bullet though?
No.
So what's your take?
That's a tough one. I think that they're unexplained things. I think I think most of it, maybe not all of it, but most of it is psychological. It's things that are created by people. I think it might also be things that, the human mind's pretty powerful, and there's the possibility that you can actually, we've all walked into a room and there's a negative energy where you can just read the room and it feels a certain way. I think a lot of the stuff that comes.
But some people, in fairness, some people have that perception or attraction than others.
Yeah.
And just because
I don't not believe.
Yeah,
I will say that.
That's
and,
the same.
I'm an X-Files fan. I want to believe.
Well, I want to jump into that because you mentioned Fox Mulder.
I was watching X-Files episodes today.
I can still watch except we'll have to talk about it because that's one of. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm a huge, to this date, I'd say X-Files is still my number one show.
Really?
Ever. The last these last two seasons, not so much.
Yeah, see, I actually didn't watch the last season because I watched the first of the reboot seasons.
There was the 6 episodes. They were not good.
Well, it was the one where the guy came in and was like, everything that you thought you knew is a smokescreen for the reality of the government. I was just like, all right, you can't tell me the 9 seasons where I saw aliens, I saw spaceships. Like, you can't tell me that was all smokescreen.
I just didn't like the direction it went, and I thought there was a bad disconnect with David and Jill. I mean, the whole thing, there was the vibe was not there, and I didn't like the last season, which I guess technically is season 11. 10 episodes, some good episodes, not maybe one. There was we always get that one from Darren Morgan. He writes the funny, and there was that one, and which it was a good one, but the whole mythology thing, I didn't like.
Well, I think what they should have done is Chris Carter should have come back and gone, we're going to do 4 more episodes and we're going to wrap up this mythology. Instead, he said, ooh, I've got a new show, let's make it more complicated and try and add another level to it for modern audiences. And then it kind of fell apart under its own. It was already on the edge of falling apart because it's really convoluted, but I think that was where it hit. It's also, I mean, we're older now. I'm sure, my parents didn't like the X-Files, so I think there's also, to be fair about myself, there's a cynicism that sets in at a certain age.
Right, no, fair enough.
It's harder to overlook the flaws.
Did you watch it in seasons 8 and 9 where David left? The Fox Motor,
and the T-1000 took over.
Yeah. I actually thought he was pretty good.
I did too, and what's funny is I remember when that first came out, and I wasn't watching the show those seasons then.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, this is stupid. They're trying to replace, Mulder and blah, blah, blah. And then when I went back and rewatched them, I'm like, oh, the way they did it is actually really clever.
Yeah.
Like, they, Mulder was never totally out of the story. He was off doing something else, and they were trying to figure out what it was. And then bringing him in to be the skeptic, because now Gillian Anderson can't be the skeptic. She's now seen Satan
too much
and ghosts, and, So I thought it was clever how they did it, but...
Totally agree. Staying with the whole U of O thing, what's your take on? Are we alone in the universe?
I don't think there's any chance we're alone in the universe.
Are they? Have they been here?
I don't know. The science would say no, that it's going to be real hard to get here, and also just there's a little bit of an arrogance to aliens come because they're so interested in us that they want to probe us and figure us out. So, but there's also a lot of interesting stories. So I don't know. I love reading UFO stuff.
Yeah, same.
So.
Well, as many of ghost shows that have been out there or that are still out there. There's a lot of UFO shows.
Yeah.
Ancient Aliens.
Ancient Aliens is so much fun.
Do you buy into it? Can you?
The first couple seasons, the first couple episodes.
To the whole ancient astronaut theory that we might have been a product of something back in the day.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Ancient Aliens, the first couple episodes, you're just like, okay, that's interesting, that's fascinating. Then by episode 3, they're like, was Jesus an alien? And it just they started reaching for stuff towards the end.
But but then when you with Ancient Aliens, when they bring up all these structures and you're seeing stuff that was built thousands of years ago, and the precision of all that shit was like.
I totally bought into it had to be aliens, and then I think it was 5 years ago, this guy built Stonehenge in his backyard using nothing but planks of wood. He did all himself. He used nothing but planks of wood and
same
pebbles.
Weight.
For real? Well, it wasn't. I think it was 3/4 scale, but he only did it himself.
I didn't know that.
And it was basically he was trying to prove that with what they had then. So he'd stick planks of wood under to prop things up, then he'd put a pebble under it and rotate it, then he'd stick it took him forever, but he did it. And I was like, that was where I hit the point. I was like, it's I think it's a little arrogant for us to be like, well, in our modern society, of course we can do these things, but they didn't know things back then.
Stonehenge is one thing, but when you look at the precision of some of these pyramids and the way
the real
Mayans,
thing is the way they align with the constellations.
Right.
That stuff is really fascinating.
How would the people back in the day be able to? I know they could see it, but to have the precision to, put stuff together.
I don't know. I don't think it's. I do think it's a stretch that they were that precise. At the same time, they had cultures, thousands and thousands of year-old cultures, where you were a person and your goal was, to look into the sky and try and figure it out.
Right.
And then your next person that came along, you gave them all your knowledge, and then the next person that came along for thousands and thousands of years. So I think it's plausible that they knew a little more than we like to think they did. And then, of course, other people came along, wiped them out, and wiped out all of their knowledge and history. So, how do we really even know what ancient peoples knew,
No.
So,
is it possible that they actually had the technology back then and something just totally wiped it out to where shit just had to start all over again?
Well, an example, if you look at it, the concretes we make now, we can't figure out how they made concrete that was that strong,
right?
Because they perfected the way they made concrete over thousands of years. So we're still trying to figure out how to replicate some of those building practices today. So,
I lay in bed.
I got real nerdy. Sorry.
No, I'm thinking I'm laying, especially when I'm watching Ancient Aliens or something where. But then a couple of years ago, the Air Force released the footage of an identified UFO that the Air Force was tracking.
Yeah.
Then the buzz came back out that is there something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Probably there's probably something out there.
Just at the end before I take my last breath, there's just some things I need to know.
Yeah.
Are we truly alone? Is there a God? And then what really happens after we die? Those are the three things I would like to know before.
Well, what's funny is 2 of those 3 you'll know immediately after you die. So
It's true. Yeah. You will. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, especially the second two, I don't think you can know that. I just think that's like an unknowable thing.
I just, if somehow, some way, science or something just found out, but.
Yeah, but do you still want to know if the answers are no, no, and nothing? Like that would be a buzzkill.
Yeah.
Like,
but I would. There would be nights where I would be able to sleep and not have to let that shit dwell in my head. What's Monsters? What I'm looking at this Monsters Wanted.
Oh,
what is that?
Monsters Wanted is my one and only documentary. We followed a group of people as they were opening the first year of a haunted Scream Park. It's actually the Asylum Haunted Scream Park out on Stone Street Road. So,
okay.
Yeah, so the first year that they took Darkness Falls and turned it into a 4-attraction haunt, we followed them from the first day of their build all the way through the last day of the first season.
And that was what?
That was 2011.
11? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was that. I came upon that. My girlfriend at the time was going to be a stage manager there, and she was like, "Hey, come with me to meet this guy who's running this haunted house." And we went to a Denny's, and he was sitting there. It was Rich, and he was sitting there. He'd been drinking coffee all day. He called it his office, and he's taking meetings. And then I sat down, and he was like, "Hey, I'm Rich. I'm quitting my $100,000 plus year job, taking my entire life savings and investing it to try and make a haunted house." And I was like, I just finished overtime. I didn't really want to do a project, but I'm like, that sounds way, like, if it succeeds, it's awesome and a huge story and something cool. If it fails, it's probably even more interesting to watch. So that was where I was like, I'm just gonna grab a camera and see what we get. And it turned into a really interesting document. If you like story-based documentaries.
Where would I find that at?
It's on Prime.
Is it?
Yep.
What about the other ones? Is Lost?
Everything.
Is it on? They're on Prime too.
Loss Prevention, and Wretch are not yet on Prime because they just came out in August, and January 29th was Wretch when that came out. So I try and give them at least 6 months to try and see if we can make any money off of them before it goes to Prime, because once they go to streaming like that, it's harder to make your money back.
Okay.
Little industry thing. So, but you can get those on iTunes, Amazon for purchase, Google Play. It's on the PlayStation
it's
Store,
interesting.
all that
So
stuff.
I did not know that. I would have thought you would want to get your stuff pushed out to.
You do. I mean, there's a bunch of different strategies for how to do stuff. The one that I'm kind of following is get it out there for sale and rental, and then it's almost like you remember when you were younger and they had like that rental window where you couldn't buy a movie, you had to go to the video store and rent it, and then it would come out to buy. Yeah. It's kind of like that. The idea is, for people who really want to see it, you try and build a fan base, and then let them.
Once they go to Prime, do they purchase the rights to the? Or how does that?
Prime is you get paid per view, per streaming. Okay. It's like that with Prime. It's like that with most of the
Netflix and all that too. Or
Netflix is a subscription. Okay. So Netflix, they'll actually.
Well, I thought Prime subscription too, right?
Well, yeah, but Netflix actually outright licenses stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
So they'll actually cut you a check, but it's not a big check. Like I think last I checked, the running amount for indie no-name horror movies, which is what we make, is like $5,000 is what Netflix will pay to take your movie for 2 years, which is kind of, you get $5,000, but then it's kind of kills it for 2 years, because everyone can see it for free on Netflix, so you're not going to be able to sell it to anybody.
Right. So, and you on Netflix, you don't get any.
No, you don't. It's that they have that one license fee, and that's the.
But Amazon, you get.
Yeah, Amazon. If you get over 100,000 views, then your amount per view goes up. There's like a whole system and structure to it.
How much has helped or hinder your work? This whole online streaming.
It's great because people can see it.
Yeah.
it stinks because almost everyone wants movies for free, which if you're Disney is great, because if you're Disney, you're putting it out in theaters, and that's the only way you can see it. So people go see it in theaters, and they buy merchandise, and then they buy it on iTunes. Then it comes out on Disney streaming service, where they're making $10 a month or $15 a month, or they have, they can license it to all these things.
Right.
For smaller guys, it's cool because you can get everything out there, but it's really hard to get any traction. And it's really hard. It's a hard sell to tell people, hey, spend $9 to buy my movie. It used to be 20. You used to make a movie and you'd be like, hey, movie's $15, movie's $20, buy it on DVD or Blu-ray.
Did I just hear they're getting rid of Blu-ray? By the way,
I don't think they're getting rid of. Sony is stopping production on their players, right. So that's the first step. That's what happened to VHS players back in the day.
I didn't look at it that way.
Yeah.
So. To go all digital, right? Yeah.
But I don't think until I think what it comes down to is if the next PlayStation has a Blu-ray player in it, Blu-ray's fine. If the next PlayStation doesn't have a Blu-ray player in it, then it's dead. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Exactly. Well. What is on your bucket list? What are things short-term goals for you?
Short-term goals? I want to get this next movie made. So that's the most immediate thing right now.
Did you say name? What's the?
Yeah, the next one is called Fall of Usher. So it's based on a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe stories that I worked into a single story.
Really? That sounds interesting.
It's a fun, kind of dreamlike, strange, psychological, just borderline experimental movie where it's just, kind of taking my cues from those old Vincent Price Poe movies and, a bunch of older horror that would really go towards that gothic world.
Right.
So yeah, I'm working on that. We're about a quarter of the way through that, and it's going to take us another 3 or 4 months probably to shoot it. So I'm pretty focused on that, and then just got Wretch out, which was a big relief. Releasing a movie is the most stressful thing ever, because just trying to get a little traction, trying to get people to notice it, and make them believe, make people understand that it's worth their time. And
do you go through like a premiere thing? Do you have a process to roll your stuff out?
It depends on the movie. Okay. So. With Overtime, we premiered it at Fright Night, the film festival here in town. And that one was our first movie. We were just like, sure, whatever. And we got a huge crowd out to that. And we got a distributor and didn't see a dime off of the distributor. And, made all the mistakes you make in releasing a movie.
But you learned a lot.
And then Monsters Wanted, I did myself to try and learn that process. And Loss Prevention, by the time Loss Prevention came around, all this, streaming stuff was there. So we ended up making that streaming original for a subscription service called Reverie, which focuses on LGBTQ content, because there's the key relationship in that is a lesbian couple.
Okay.
So that was a totally different, it feels like I'm reinventing the wheel every single time a movie comes out, because it changes so fast. When we started, it was DVD, Blu-ray, and somewhat iTunes. And by now, 10 years later and 8 years later, DVD and Blu-ray are going away. And it's not even iTunes anymore. It's now the streaming services and subscription services, and trying to figure out how to kind of unlock that magic door is a whole other challenge. So.
I'm curious. I think I may have asked, Antonio's been on, and I maybe have asked him. I'll ask you. Hollywood is the cream of the crop, the pinnacle. And, when you have something like the Harvey, I'm not saying it right, Weinstein, is that Weinstein?
I always said Weinstein, but I don't know if that's right.
But we know what we're talking about. Clearly, how that's all played out, and what was, from my understanding, is that people knew who he was for years.
Oh yeah.
And then it finally just, it all happened and came out. Does that something at that level, does it kind of go through the whole film industry, resonate to, I mean, is that something even at the indie scene you're thinking we got to be cognizant of?
Yeah, well, I think it's, whenever something like that happens and it's so prevalent that you understand that this was a systemic problem for years and years, it makes you
abuse
think,
of power,
yeah,
too.
And it also just makes you, look at things and go, okay, what do I need to be aware of in my life, to make sure, that I'm being respectful of, where other people are at with this, and where, and that I'm doing everything right, and not, not having some bias that I haven't been aware of.
Not you personally, but is there anything like that in the indie scene where someone who has that kind of, I don't know, power locally or at this level that's
not that I know of, and I think that's like everyone here, no one here is Steven Spielberg. And that's kind of great. Right. No one here is Harvey Weinstein. No one has that level of power. So, I think that, from my experience, when someone's ego starts to get out of hand or they start to do inappropriate things, the rest of the community finds out about it really quickly. So that's one good thing is, it's not, it's a very small town, as you know. If something's going on that's hurting one person, we're people stand up for each other in this town, and things come out pretty quickly.
Definitely. What's your end game, man?
Honestly, I just want to keep making movies. So whatever
here
that
locally,
looks like.
Or do you want to get out of town? Do you want?
I do not have any goals to get out of town.
Oh.
I don't have any goals to grow to that level. I'd like to get to a point where I've got a little higher budgets for these things. But
how does that happen though? Because I mean, when I watch Overtime, and I can't wait to watch Wretch and Lost Permission. I'm thinking if they're anywhere near Overtime. So a movie like that, where in my opinion, it was a pretty solid movie. Movies like that, does that resonate? Does that open door? I mean, but I guess you're competing with.
There's so many. There's a lot of movies getting like the great thing about movies right now is, anyone with a camera and a few bucks can make a movie. The bad thing about movies right now is anybody with a camera and a few bucks can make a movie. So it's like there's so much stuff out there that it's really hard to break through. So for me, I what I love about the way the industry is now is it really is an art form now in a way that I don't think it could have been 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, you can't make a movie without minimum, 300, 400 grand just for the film. So, you've got a lot riding on these movies, and it's hard to take risks, and it's hard to look someone in the eye who's giving you that money and say, no, my art, the thing that I'm doing, where I'm taking chances, where I'm doing weird stuff, is going to make your money back. Right. Now you don't have to do that because you can, if you're creative about it, you can find ways to do really cool, expressive, interesting things with very little risk. So
I'm curious, these movies, could you have went, say, the YouTube route?
Probably.
And if you go the YouTube route, you're still 100% yours. I mean, and they're streaming, and you're reaping any of the all the rewards of the views. But what's the plus minus with that though?
The trick with YouTube is to get the amount of views to make good money. Like YouTube's all about just content. Right. So most of the people who are successful on YouTube are making 3-minute videos, and they're doing 400 a year because every video they make has a pre-roll ad, a middle ad, and an end ad. Whereas if you make a movie, even if you get 1 million views on that movie, you do the math on it. If you do 1 million views and you get advertising and you get paid 1 cent per ad, like that's some money, but it's not, 1 million people have seen your movie. and you're still probably not at break even.
Right.
So that's the challenge of YouTube. I think YouTube is more monetizable for, in my opinion, like short stuff where you're putting out a lot of content.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know. These are all just I am by no means an expert. I should have said that at the outset, but this is, kind of my musings.
I'm not gonna hold you to everything you've said. But,
I'm sure there's a filmmaker out there who's used YouTube and has made a ton of money and is doing great stuff.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. But to your point, I know, the people who are doing the short, they're pumping out short things once a week or whatever.
Yep.
There's a lot of successful.
Yep.
Staying with the digital, is there what's next? What is the next thing out there? Right now we've got the Netflix, Prime, all these other. What is that next level of digital type of access for you guys?
I don't know. I think if I knew, I'd be rich. Because I'd be able to call it. You've got Disney now doing their own streaming services, so all these streaming services are breaking up into smaller stuff. I think there's going to be a lot of cord cutters. And then I think you're going to find like an Amazon is going to be really attractive, where like you can get on Amazon now and you can buy subscriptions to Showtime and all this stuff through your Amazon account, and it's kind of becoming the new like cable network where you can pick which one you want. So I think that's going to probably keep going. But I think the future is definitely free. I think it's ad-sponsored content and subscription-sponsored, stuff. So, trying to figure out the little guy trying to figure out how to make money free is the hard part. If you're Disney, like I said, you just license your catalog and you can,
Exactly.
you've got a cash cow that just brings money in. But if you've only got 3 or 4 movies or one movie and you're trying to make money on that and not go through a distributor, that gets really tough. So,
I did see there's a YouPorn is launching a new app. Did you see that?
I did not. Tell me more.
You can't. It's not available through the Apple or Google, apps. You have to go. You have to go use a browser, go to a site, and get and download it from there. But you can use it on.
Right. Yeah. But it's a browser app kind of thing. So. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, everything's an app now, which, it has been for years, but...
How does that play in what you guys, or what you can do, or...
For me personally, it doesn't really, it means that...
Or the industry, for you.
Yeah, there's everyone's trying to start a streaming service now. So I went out to the American film market this year, just to kind of feel my way through, and it was hard to get meetings with distributors. It was hard to get meetings with buyers. It was real easy to get meetings with streaming services, because everyone is starting a streaming service. Everyone who can get 20 movies together and license them is starting a streaming service. So, I think...
Is there a minimum? That's a real good point.
I guess it's whatever anyone will pay for. Whatever you can get, $3.99 from someone. So most of these are like really specific content, So we had a meeting with someone who's doing a cryptocurrency streaming service that basically allows your movie to be available internationally because it's paid for with cryptocurrency.
Right.
So you don't have to go through the normal channels, of licensing through different outlets and things like that. So I think what's really going to happen is all these apps and all these streaming services, it's just, there's going to be someone who comes up with an aggregator. And there's a couple out there now, but they're not great, where, okay, put your movie on our aggregator, we'll license it to all these 1,500 services that have these tiny little piece of the pie, and then take 20% off the top and give you the rest of it.
Right.
I think if I had to guess where things are going, someone's going to figure out how to do that and just put a pipeline.
Wouldn't that ultimately, the more streaming services, more apps out there, isn't it to benefit the you guys?
To some
more
extent.
more indie.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, the problem is, the revenue, because everything's so cut up, the revenue off of those is almost nothing. So, you spend a week of your life trying to deliver your movie to, XYZ streaming service, and then they end up putting
Take me
it
through
in
that
front of
process.
like 4 people.
What's the distribution process? Give me an idea.
It depends on how the delivery process is a pain in the butt. So when we
you can say ass on it.
Oh, yeah, ass. There you go. It's a pain in the ass. But it's the delivery process is like you've got to deliver your master file, which is the video at certain things that passes QC, that has certain levels that are legal, of the white level, black level, and then it's got 8 tracks of audio. And then if you're going through a distributor, you've got to have the music and effects only track that has the voice out. So if they sell it to China, they can dub over all the voices and just pull one track out. So, delivery, if you have a successful movie, like delivery can end up costing you more than you spent on the movie. Delivery can easily cost like $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, depending on how you're doing it. Yeah, so, but, if you're delivering that, in theory, you've got a good deal, so you're going to make some money. In reality, that's not always the case, because there have been a lot of times where people go through these big delivery processes, give it to a distribution company that turns out to just be an aggregator that's going to throw it up on iTunes and a couple other places, and then they just don't see any money. So, that happens all the time. From my, like I said, not an expert, just talking from my limited experience and stories I've heard from people.
But you're still having fun doing this.
Oh yeah, and I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for that.
Right.
It's all about create. Like I love the idea of I love to look at a movie I've done and just be like, hey, that, whether you like it or didn't like it, that didn't exist and now it does. That's just a really cool.
It is the
feeling.
definition of art.
Yeah. So that's a really cool thing, and it's it's getting seen by people, which I've figured out. I'm not getting rich off of it, but I figured out how to get it out there to where it's being seen.
Do you get
where I can actually interact with people about it and talk to people, about what they think about it.
So I'm guessing like with Prime, and you have access to the stats and all the,
Yeah, over it. Sometimes it's delayed and stuff, which is frustrating.
Well, I stand right. I know you have access, but how soon is it?
With iTunes, I get the info almost immediately. It's like it's within 48 hours. With the other ones, it's not till the end of the month that I get a report that tells me, which is really frustrating. Like when we're doing the release of Wretch, I'm trying to put money into advertising and stuff, and I don't know if this is working or not because I've got to wait till the end of the month. But you've really got to hit that opening weekend real hard to try and get interest going. So,
who's when it comes to advertising dollars? Who are your sources? Who's your go-to?
I am absolutely not an expert on this. So this is, if anyone has any ideas on better solutions to this problem, please let me know. I use a lot of Facebook stuff because their reporting is really good. Like they'll tell you exactly how many clicks, how many likes, how many, all this stuff, and what your cost per was, and you can change what you're targeting and all that stuff. It's really, you can do a lot there. And then I put a bunch of money into YouTube ads this round, just pre-roll ads on YouTube to try and, people who are already watching stuff about horror, do that little 15-second pre-roll. And then making the ads as its own thing where you've got to, you got like 6 seconds to grab their attention and then try and get them to watch the rest of the ads. So, it's all just this fight for attention because there's way too much stuff out there now, and it's hard to get someone to go, okay, I'm going to sit down and spend the next hour and a half of my life looking at this thing that you've made. So that's really the goal at the end of the day.
Is there, as far as personnel, is there wish list, realistic wish list people? Do you have those in your head that you would like to work with?
that is yes. I mean, yeah. And what's weird is they're like I remember John Cusack came and worked on a movie here, and I was so like, John Cusack's gonna come work on a movie, and like we're so close. Yeah. I wish it was my movie, but that kind of stuff. Yeah, for me,
are those people? But in reality, those are achievable.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's just a budget question,
right.
Like, you can get.
How do you go about? Do you have to go through like, I guess some type of casting or?
Not really. I mean, if you know who you're going after, well, there's a couple things. First of all those actors are SAG. So it's Screen Actors Guild.
Right, yeah.
So to make a movie with John Cusack, you've got to be a Screen Actors Guild certified movie, which means you have to pay everyone a certain amount, like all the way down the line, and all the so therefore your budget then becomes okay, this is your minimum budget just to pay people, what they deserve, because they absolutely deserve it, is X. Then above that, you've got to.
So it's safe to say that we're not dealing with a lot of SAG personnel.
No, none of my movies have been SAG because they've all been ultra low budget stuff. But like I said, we've got great actors in town, so you can make some really cool stuff without having to go SAG. But then if you do go SAG, you got to pay this person more. But you can get on IMDb and look up at someone's agent in like 2 seconds, and then you just message the agent and give them an offer. And if you message with the number, they'll definitely call you back. If you say, I've got a SAG movie, it's shooting in Kentucky on these dates, and here's what I'd like to offer your client, they'll get back to you.
So if they are SAG, they're in a sense, if you don't, I guess if your budget is this, but there's SAG, does that mean even though they would want to do it, they like the story?
In theory, if they really love your movie, or you're really good friends with them, or they know your mom or something, then they can sign a thing and go. There's FICOR, which basically takes them out of SAG.
So there's a process.
But it's really looked down upon. So they've really got to like them, which I totally get. I mean, when you get to LA and New York, and there's these movies going, like, these grips and actors and day players, they got to eat.
That's protecting them.
Yeah,
too.
So I'm not against SAG.
Protecting them and protecting the.
It just means that I can't just go, okay, I'm going to make this movie for $5, but I'm going to spend $15,000 on an actor for a day and get him into my movie. You've got, in order to get an actor into the movie, you're looking at probably minimum $100,000 budget just to pay enough people to make the movie, SAG wages, and then bring them in. Or you could try and find actors who are name actors who are already FICOR, who are already or on non-SAG. A lot of people will cast like people in bands, famous bands, who aren't yet actors but are trying to get into acting because they don't have their SAG card. So you can do stuff like that.
And you're using their notoriety already.
Exactly. So there's ways there's interesting ways to figure out how to get a name into a movie.
I didn't think of that, but that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to have Al in our movie, and Al is a professional wrestler. So at that time,
a lot of mainstream, man.
Yeah. So that was huge for us, and we thanked him as much as we could for that. And then he's also in Loss Prevention. He's actually become a buddy of ours.
Well, he's here living there now, and plus he's OVW, right?
Yep. Yeah. I think he just purchased OVW.
Yeah, he's the owner, right? Yeah,
super cool.
What else, man?
I don't know. I feel like we got into the super nerdy talk.
We did. But see, that's just I don't. My thing is that it's not an interview. It's a conversation. And I'm thinking, well, whatever. Here's what the Empire actor that got fired. You know what I'm talking about? It's the black guy.
Yeah.
And he said that he was assaulted.
Oh, I just heard a little piece of this.
Supposedly now that's not the case. It was staged. Did you hear it?
I heard just a tiny little piece of it today, so I cannot intelligently talk about it.
I might that part out.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, let's stay with TV film. What's some of the movies or stuff that you've seen out lately that you've enjoyed or recommend? And
I liked Hereditary. I didn't love Hereditary, just sticking with horror.
Yeah.
Because everyone was like, did you, what do you feel? Because some people hate it, and some people love it. I really liked it. The ending, I think the first half of that movie's kind of genius.
Right.
And then it has to do the horror payoff at the end, and the horror payoff's just a little, oh, okay, we're doing that again? Yeah, right. I've seen that before, but they did it well.
One of my favorite writers, directors, I'll admit it, M. Night.
I love M. Night because when he fails, he fails.
Oh yeah, I mean, and when he scores, I mean, it's
but like The Happening.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I struggle with that one. Obviously Sixth Sense.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
One of my favorite movie of his was Unbreakable. Do you know the story?
I haven't seen
Split.
I haven't seen Split, or no, I have seen Split. I haven't seen Glass yet.
Yeah, which I haven't either.
Okay.
But staying with that, that whole, I'm going somewhere with this. The notion, I did really find it interesting with Unbreakable. That isn't it logic? Logic to me should say that if you have someone who's physically at one end of the spectrum, Mr. Glass, with all his physical issues, the bone, isn't there someone who theoretically is, at the other end, doesn't get sick, is and doesn't even maybe not even know it,
Yeah.
Real? Yes. No. Do you buy into that or not? I'm in real life.
Do I buy into that in real life?
I mean, so if you have someone who is born into this world with all this disability, deformity or whatever, why couldn't there be someone who is perfect? The golden child or
the golden. That's a good movie. I love that movie. No, I don't think I buy into that.
God, it's funny you said I did. I stopped. I'm going through one of these. I don't know if it was like Crackle or whatever. All these apps now. And I think I stopped and I saw the golden child. And I did watch it. It actually really.
Every time, I forget about it for years, and then it'll pop up somewhere, and I'm like, "Yep, all right, I'm watching this right now. I'm sitting down."
Yeah.
Just Eddie Murphy's phenomenal,
and he's another one too that he's made some good movies.
Oh yeah,
but then
everyone hits that period. It feels like every comedian hits that period where they're like, "Okay, I'm 40, 45 now. Time to make family movies," and they just make these awful family movies that we hate. But then what's funny is our kids would be like, that's, because we have the same thing where we know certain actors from, the crappy movies they made, and we love them, I'm 35.
Okay, so obviously I've got years on you. I mean, I was, staying with Eddie Murphy, one of my all-time favorite Eddie Murphy movies, 48 Hours. And that was early 80s. I'm in high school then.
Yeah.
And you're not.
Are you really? How old are you?
51.
Are you really?
Yeah. So.
See, I look 51. You look 35.
You
so
don't. You look like you're in your 30s. We're all over the place, but it's okay. What are the more popular types of, staying with with Netflix or whatever? The Ted Bundy tapes. Why are those? We might have touched on this earlier, but again, why are that whole kind of documentary / because to me, Bundy's a monster. Yeah.
But
those,
that's not to you. That is true.
And those are
Ted Bundy is in fact was in fact a monster.
And that's the scariest type of monster.
Yeah.
Because he's real.
Yeah.
It's not someone.
There's a lot of criticism of that show because if you actually, I mean, I'm a little bit of a serial killer research person, I like to.
Wait a minute. I could have cut that soundbite.
Please,
I'm a little bit of a serial killer. Period.
I dabble. I like to read true crime, serial killer stuff, and one of the criticisms was they left so much. It was all this stuff about how charming he was, but there's a lot what he actually did is barely mentioned in that documentary.
I have not seen this is the one where it's not the one with Zach. You're not talking about that one, right?
No.
I'm talking about the one with the actual audio.
Yeah, the
stuff.
tapes.
Yeah. So that's what I've heard. Yeah, that they played that card on how. Yeah.
I enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed the documentary. It's done by Joe Berlinger.
But I heard the brutality wasn't.
No, it was more about it was more, they kind of put him a little bit on a pedestal where they're like, look at how smart this guy was. I was like, all right, Ted Bundy wasn't that smart. When he was trying to kidnap women and they walked up and were like, hey, who are you? He was like, hey, I'm Ted. You're not that smart if you're using your real name. Or you're just so arrogant you don't think you're,
I think that was it.
The reality of it. Yeah. But, they tried to play it up. Ever since Silence of the Lambs, any serial killer, especially Ted Bundy, you want to compare to Hannibal Lecter because that super intelligent, charming, character is really interesting and gets people to watch. So I think that was kind of, that was the play. And then if they've got the movie coming out with Zac Efron, and then they do the documentary, and when you really look at it, Netflix is releasing the Zac Efron movie.
Right.
That documentary was a commercial for the Zac Efron movie as well.
That's a good way to put it.
So they probably didn't want to get into the gruesomeness of it because they didn't want to turn people off from charming Zac Efron, given his smile,
Staying with that logic there, Dracula, vampires. Do you like the fact that Dracula, the whole Dracula story, is really now it's been portrayed as a love story rather than a brutal See,
I'm not. I love romantic horror. I'm not like oh, it's all about showing the horrors of stuff. I think you can do interesting things with anything. So I really liked the 1990 whatever Coppola Dracula, which had had that.
It was a love story.
That love story element to it. But I think I love the Dracula story because you can do Nosferatu, which goes one direction, or you can do 1994 or whatever it was, Dracula, which goes the exact opposite direction.
That could actually be out during the day.
Yeah. So they just kind of change, and you can vampires. It's like change the mythology every 3 years and go actually, and every vampire
favorite vampire movie.
Favorite vampire movie? Probably gonna have to go Interview with the Vampire, which I know is a really lame answer, kind of, especially if you're like, oh, this guy's hardcore horror. It's a great movie.
I love that story.
I can watch that anytime.
In some kind of crazy way, there's some believability to it.
Well, when you're talking about vampire stories as love stories, it kind of is. Yeah. It absolutely is a love story. Yeah. It's just it was a time when you couldn't come out and say that was a love story. But
coolest vampire flick? Lost Boys.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I really just recently a friend finally made me watch The Hunger with David Bowie.
That actually, I hadn't seen that in a while.
That was a really good movie.
He killed it.
He was. No, but it took a turn.
Who's the female in there?
Susan Sarandon was one of them, and I can't remember the other one. I think she was a French actress, maybe.
Okay.
But Susan Sarandon was great in it, and that little love triangle, it was perverse. It was great.
Oh, I know. Do you remember the movie Fright Night?
Yep.
With shit, Chris Sarandon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Staying with the Sarandon thing.
Yeah, I liked Fright Night. I really liked the original Fright Night. I really liked the remake with
you?
Anton Yelchin. I thought
Wasn't that
Colin Firth or
Farrell. Yeah,
Colin Firth. That would have been a terrible movie. Colin Farrell was the vampire, but Anton Yelchin was the kid.
That's right. Yeah.
And I just I thought they did some really interesting stuff with that, with like David Tennant as the Fright Night host, but he's like gothic on stage. I thought that was it was just a really clever way to.
What's your take on more of the sci-fi type of monster horror, like Aliens and Predator?
Love
Because
Aliens.
Predator just came out.
I didn't see the new Predator.
I didn't either.
I'm less of a Predator fan than an Aliens fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love Predator, and Predator 2 is one of the most entertaining. Like Danny Glover in like
Gary
the
Busey.
city. Like it's such a bizarre, but somehow it kind of works. So,
Yeah.
no, I love Aliens.
The second one.
I love both.
The first one,
they're like totally different movies, but somehow they work.
To me, Aliens, the second one,
Yeah.
is my favorite.
Aliens is the one. Aliens, I want to like Alien better because I think it's a better movie. But when it comes down to it, what am I going to actually put in my DVD player and watch? Aliens.
Yeah.
You know, it's just more entertaining.
Bill Paxton's character was hilarious.
So great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I love the sci-fi horror stuff. I think it's overdone now, and it's hard to find something fresh.
Yeah.
I watched Annihilation recently.
That's on my wish list.
I wanted to like it more than I did. It had some cool ideas in it, which I love movies with cool ideas, but it just didn't. It just kind of plodded along.
Do you do a lot
it
of
was just hitting
binge watching? Because it's so accessible. Everything's, it's out there for it.
I do a lot of binge scrolling through things. I'll spend 3 hours trying to find that perfect movie.
Yeah, but not that you're ripping off some movie.
Yeah.
But do you do that stuff? Do you watch stuff to maybe trigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think
research.
Well, I also I think everyone does. I think anyone who says that they don't do that is absolutely lying. Because if you watch, especially horror is the best genre to look at. You can see things like, in the 80s, there was a style of movie that was just happening. Today, there's a style, like Hereditary and all those movies, there's a style to that, the way they're shot, the way they look, the way they're character-oriented and slow, and, all that stuff. Like, everything is ripping off everything else, Everyone's like, Stranger Things is so original. It's just a concoction of everything in the 80s. And Stranger Things came out a couple of years after It Follows, which was the first movie to kind of revamp all that 80s stuff. So it's kind of ripping off It Follows and also stealing a bunch of Stephen King stuff. Yeah. But it's great. It's if you do it, I think what really matters with the movie is, do you do it well? And that you're not aggressively stealing an interest. If you have the same twist as another movie immediately, then that can be a problem. So.
What's your give me some of your all-time favorite movies?
All-time favorite movies or horror movies?
Horror movies.
I love The Exorcist because it scared the crap out of me as a kid, seeing it when I was 9 years old, raised Catholic.
I'll one-up you on that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, when I watched The Exorcist,
that.
I was like, I went to my mom. I'm like, Mom, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen? She's like, The Exorcist. But you have to watch it with me, and you have to be careful because it's real. My mom was like, this is real. If you're not careful, demons can possess you. Yeah. Okay, 9-year-old, watch this. And I'm just like I didn't sleep for weeks. It was great.
Same. Hold that thought. When I was 12 years old, church, it was like our youth group, our youth pastor, whatever, the who was over us guys, youth team, took like 10 of us out. 12-year-old boys,
right,
to movie night. We went to watch Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
Again, I did not sleep for weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I was scared shitless.
Have you rewatched it recently?
Probably not recently.
It's kind of cheesy now. Like, and it bummed me out because I watched it again.
That's one of the things.
Like the eyes, and they're just like.
I know that's right.
It bums me out. I don't like to rewatch some of those things.
Now, Exorcist still.
I think Exorcist holds up.
Holds up.
Yeah.
Amityville, correct.
Well,
it doesn't.
And what was great about The Exorcist is when I watched it as a kid, it was just this scary movie about demons, and then I watched it a little later. I'm like, oh, this is just like a really good drama about a mother dealing with a kid who's sick. It just happens to be that the sickness is demon possession.
Do you believe that?
I don't want to. Because of The Exorcist, I want that to be totally fake. But it's one of my it's one of the scariest things, and like that's when I say that I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm scared. That's what pops into my head. That's what gets to me is demon stuff, like that stuff. I actually dabbled. I did like a couple of weeks of like I'm gonna do a show of ghost hunting, but it's gonna be like, hey, let's see if we can debunk some of this. And a couple creepy things happened to me that are totally explainable. But in my head, I was just like, nope, done. Put all that stuff away. Just not gonna think about it because it was just like. I don't, I have a mom that told me that demons would possess me if I wasn't careful. So, you can be as logical as you want.
There you go.
But my mom thinks it's real, so that's good enough for me.
Staying with some of your favorites, you said Exorcist. What? Give me some more.
Okay, I'll do the rapid fire list, so I'm not thinking about it too much. Exorcist, Halloween, The Thing, In the Mouth of Madness. Love
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah,
I watched that. That to me is
the original
still
thing too, but
it's still the whole. A little, but
yeah,
I love the storyline.
Yeah,
I mean, I did.
Yeah, I think
what
the
happened
thing is
at the end.
At the end,
are they both free or in clear, or is one of them? Or was it Knowles or no? Not who's the?
I can't remember.
What was his name? The black.
Yeah, I think he is one of them at the end. But that's my opinion. But I love movies movies where that was a ballsy ending. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
At that time, you're like, what's the ending of your movie that's costing $4 or $5 million?
Yeah, at that time was
the main character and one other guy are still alive, and they sit outside where they're going to freeze to death. Like that's
and you're thinking, and the thought is that.
Such a great
one of them's probably The Thing, got one of the monsters, and it's going to freeze, and eventually
and the body's going to get picked up, and that's going to be the end of the world. Yeah. Well, that's John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy. Yeah. That's the first one of those. So two of the things.
Is it really?
Yeah. So he made 3 movies that are the end of the world.
I didn't realize that was the first. Okay.
The first one was The Thing. The second one was Prince of Darkness. I think Prince of Darkness came out after The Thing. I'm 99% sure Prince of Darkness came after The Thing.
We'll say it did.
Okay, then In the Mouth of Madness, which I love as a Lovecraft fan.
I've not seen that one.
It's such a good one. You should check it out.
Okay.
Especially if you love, it's my favorite Lovecraft adaptation, and it's not a Lovecraft adaptation. But it's, you talk about stealing. They stole everything they could from Lovecraft and stuck it into that movie. Whatever.
She said Halloween, The Thing. What else did you say?
The Thing, In the Mouth of Madness.
No, your favorites.
Texas Chainsaw, obviously.
Okay. None of the Freddy or Jason.
Actually, if I put Wes Craven's New Nightmare in my favorites. I think Wes Craven's New Nightmare is actually better, in my opinion. I like it better than the original. Which probably. I was a kid when that one came out, so I understood it. I love the whole Nightmare series, but I just thought it was so ahead of its time and so clever to do the meta reality thing. That blew my mind when I was a kid. And then I love Hellraiser. The original Hellraiser is.
Didn't they just do one in the last couple of years?
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I think I saw I saw the movie of it on Netflix.
I'll watch every Hellraiser that comes out just because I love the Cenobites and that whole world. It's so interesting. But this last one they did, it was better than the one before it. The one before it was the one that was quasi found footage Hellraiser. It was awful.
I didn't know that.
I just the guy they got as Pinhead is doing his best, but they got to bring Doug Bradley back if they're going to keep making these movies.
One movie I watched within the last week. This is one of my I forgot what I say all-time favorites, but there's probably I could probably rattle up 20 all-time favorites. Yeah. The Crow.
Yeah. See, I haven't seen The Crow in a while.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I first saw The Crow, I didn't like it, but that was
Really?
because like that whole goth culture was huge, and I was like,
I wasn't into it.
I was in that teenage years phase where I was like, no, that's dumb. Anything I'm not into is dumb, and like, so I just kind of dismissed it. I need to revisit that one a little bit. So.
Yeah, I wasn't a teenager when it came out, by the way.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, I might not have. I think I saw it late. 94?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was pretty young.
Yeah. But then the ones after that, which they've had several, I didn't care for.
Candyman's in my top.
Yes.
I love Candyman so much, and I'm so excited.
You know, I don't do. It's funny you Candyman because. See what's the Tuesday? About 10 days ago. Somehow, some way, I follow and he follows me. The Shooting from the Lip Instagram, Tony Todd. And I had reached out to him if he would do, because I don't do, normally my podcasts are face to face.
Yeah.
But with the right person, I can. There's I don't know if you're familiar with Zoom.
Yeah.
App, where it's like a meeting thing. So
Yeah.
we're trying to schedule. I want to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
ask him if he wants to be in a movie.
Yeah.
I'll write something for Tony. I love Tony Todd so much.
That Candyman, that's great.
If you talk to him, you got to ask him how he feels, because Jordan Peele is doing a reboot. He's remaking Candyman.
Really?
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea.
Well, no, okay, but see, all right.
I'm fine with remakes. The original will always exist. I've got it.
You don't think sometimes the remake just, doesn't? I just think it does. Maybe
okay. So if it sucks, like the remake of Friday the 13th was terrible.
Okay.
So everyone just ignores it and still watches the old movies.
Okay, fair enough,
So
fair enough.
I don't know that I'm really that bothered by remakes.
Okay.
I like the idea of, I want them to be good, because I love the new Child's Play looks totally different. Doesn't look it actually. I want to like it more. I want to like the look of it more, but like, to me, Chucky's not a cyborg doll that's attacking people.
Right.
He's the possessed doll.
Right. Yeah.
But I'll watch it and I'll want to like it.
Well, yeah,
I like to come at movies.
Yeah.
That's what drives me crazy with people. People come at movies like, I want to hate this.
Right.
I don't know how you can live that way.
That's a good point. There's so many iconic monster characters or whatever that there's like they're too good of a monster to only be done once.
Yeah.
The Predator, Alien.
Yeah.
But the problem
Freddy
is
Krueger.
Freddy
Krueger
the
was
same. But
because
you
could give me a movie a year with Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, just take 5 kids and be like, they did something bad. Their parents did something bad. Kill them. And it's just be 5 kill scenes and call it a movie, and I'll go watch it.
I'm with you, but I just want the movie to do the character justice.
Yeah.
And that's, and more times than not, it does.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I had really mixed feelings about the Nightmare remake, because I actually really liked it as a movie. Now, Freddy was totally different. He was like a child molester, super gross guy, but it was really interesting. Like, so, I was hoping that they would keep making those. I wanted to see where it would go, just even though the first one wasn't great. But it looks like, and then when they canceled it, I was like, well, maybe they'll make another Robert Englund one, and they didn't do that either. So I'd rather they make more movies, and then I'll just pick the ones I like later.
Are we getting to a situation where somebody like a Netflix or Amazon Prime can, because they're creating originals all the time. What's the logistics of them saying, if stay with Predator, if they want, I guess Fox or somebody owns the rights of, so if Netflix wanted to do their version of, you have to purchase
You have to either buy the rights to the character outright, or you can license it.
Okay.
So that's what happened with Spider-Man. That's why Spider-Man was at Sony for so long, and why they were making terrible movies. Because Sony had a license from Marvel for Spider-Man that was like, hey, you got to make this movie in 2 years, and if you don't, we get the rights back. So they were like, hey, let's remake Spider-Man 15 times and do bad sequels. So, and then they finally let that lapse, and we got Homecoming, which was a great movie. So.
Well,
what, disagreement?
No, I'm with you.
Okay.
Wrapping up here, what's I'm gonna give it some more rapid fire type questions.
Sure.
If you had access to a superpower, what would it be? You got to fight all these bad guys, so
Okay, so there's a lot of bad guys.
There's a lot of bad guys, monsters. So, think of all the monsters we talked about. You got to have what would be your superpower to try to combat them?
Probably healing. Probably healing powers.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a wimp. Like, I'm gonna get my ass kicked a lot. I don't want to die.
No, but if you're like Superman.
Well, yeah, but Superman's not one power. Superman's like 20 powers.
That's a good point.
Like,
and
that's
then,
not fair.
and then
You can't
technically,
just be...
Batman has no powers, right?
Yeah. Okay, if I had to pick a superpower, Dr. Manhattan. The ability to dissociate and recombine matter.
Oh.
Because he's immortal, he can do whatever the hell he wants. There's absolutely no way to stop him.
That's okay.
Yeah. So.
If you could be stuck in an elevator with a celebrity, who would it be?
Stuck in an elevator with a celebrity. I'm trying to think, but the answer would have been Wes Craven, but then he died. I don't think John Carpenter, because John Carpenter apparently, like, I don't know that I'd like him as a person, and that would be crushing if I met him and he wasn't there, or he wasn't someone I liked. Maybe Robert Englund? That'd be fun.
You mentioned him.
He seems like a fun guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking logistically, like, if I'm in an elevator for 4 hours, I want someone who likes to tell stories, and that's what I hear.
All right, cool.
If he was still alive, Vincent Price would have been the answer, too.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Definitely Vincent Price, yeah. If you had access to a time machine, and you can go anywhere in the past to observe, you're not changing history, you're just going to go back and be a part of this moment, time frame, where would you go?
God, that's a deep question. I have to think through these things. Either Jesus Christ, so I could actually see what actually happened, and then I could come back and tell every Christian that I know what the reality of the situation was. Or the making of Psycho. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I would love to see.
Hitchcock.
I want to see Hitchcock at work. I want to see what his process working was actually like, which is, I know, the nerdiest, weirdest explanation ever. I'm sure there's 1,000 other things that would trump that, but right now that's what pops into my head.
Well, our budget only allows for 2. So
Yeah.
there you go. All right, man. Good stuff.
Cool.
Wish you all the luck. Again, I'm really digging the whole film industry scene locally, and the more, I've had, you, John, Antonio. I think I've actually had Sabrina. I've had several, and all these great stories, and the talent. There's a lot of very talented people, and you guys. I mean, just what you do is I commend, and anything I can do to help give you a platform.
Well, on that note, I will say Wretch is now available for purchase on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, PlayStation Store, and Vudu.
I am going to check it out. So Wretch is out there.
Wretch is out there, and Loss Prevention's out there too.
Good. Very cool.
Yeah, but we've talked horror a lot, so Wretch is probably, if you've listened this far, you'll probably be a bigger fan of Wretch.
Right. Very cool.
So-
Well, thanks for hanging out.
All right,
man.
thanks a lot. It was great to hang out.
All right, thanks, bud.